Let's let the participants in. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's month of service presentation. We're here to provide you information today about maintaining and adding value to your home. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the month of service collaboration. Also included, we have the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today, we have Ms. Cecile Carlson. But also included in our partnership, we have Lone Star Legal Aid, the Earl Carl Institute, Texas Legal Services Center, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, the Harris Central Appraisal District, and the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. And together we make up a month of service. And a month of service is the collaboration of all of our organizations coming together on a monthly basis, offering a variety of different workshops and resources and information to the community relative to asset building, asset protection, community empowerment, and the maintaining of generational wealth. We decided several years ago to come together in a collective effort and pool all of our resources and all of our own initiatives in a hope to create a larger impact and get more information out to the community as a whole, as opposed to us just kind of individually doing each thing ourselves. So what we're going to be providing for you today is information about maintaining and adding value to your home. Basically, kind of give you some home maintenance tips and what is it that you could do to help prolong the longevity of your home. And as you're thinking along the lines of making some renovations and some upgrades and uh, things like that to your home, then what does that do for your actual appraised value? And does any of those repairs actually help increase those values? And as it relates also to, property taxes and protests and so on and so forth. So we're going to get into a lot of that information. Today, we're going to have, on behalf of our organization, we're going to have Clifford Joe with GI Inspections, who's going to be presenting the home maintenance tips for you. And then we're going to have Miss Nikki Collins with Keys Real Estate Services, who will be presenting the information on appraising or adding value to your home. So this is your opportunity to ask questions of our experts that are going to be present here for us today. So if you are joining us on Zoom, please feel free to type your question into the comment section, and we'll read it at the end of the presentation, or you can feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself and you can ask the questions directly. Do know that we are broadcasting live on our social media platforms as well as recording this session for us to send out to all of the participants who registered in advance. So do keep that in mind as you're asking your questions, because we don't want your personal detail information kind of getting out there. So we want to try to protect your privacy as best we can. Also know that the information that is provided is for educational purposes only. If you do find yourselves in need of any assistance for any of our presenters throughout our workshops, we do encourage you to reach out to them for that. So also, in addition to that, like I mentioned before, there's a variety of different workshops that we offer each month. But if there are some issues or some concerns that are pertinent to what's going on in your life, within your community, please feel free to let us know so that we can make plans potentially to host something in relation to what's urgent or what's concerning for you all. That's basically we kind of you know appreciate the feedback that we receive from all of our participants. So we do rely on that when it comes to us scheduling our various workshops and presentations. So do keep that in mind. If you are joining us on our social media platforms, feel free to type your question into the comment sections there, and I will read those aloud at the end of the presentation as well. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to have introductions first. We're going to have Ms. Cecile Carlson with the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods.
Thank you, Nia. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cecile Carlson. I'm an outreach coordinator here at the Office of Neighborhood Engagement with the Department of Neighborhoods. And like Nia said, we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service partnership. We are very thankful and blessed to have all of our collaborators and all our partners present information to the community. Make sure to pay attention and get all the information where you are listening to people that are experts on the subject matter that do this day in and day out. And I'm glad that we're able to provide this information that is true, that has been vetted by experts for the community. And so I appreciate everybody being here, everybody tuning in on our different platforms. And thank you so much as well to our presenters for being here.
Okay. It's Nikki Collins.
Good afternoon. I keep saying good morning, but good afternoon. My name is Nikki Collins. I'm a 20+ year real estate professional, real estate appraiser, certified general appraiser, and a new real estate sales agent. And it's a mess out here in these streets. But I'm always excited about helping people learn how to use real estate as an investment tool to create wealth for them and their families. All right. You want me to get started?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And again, just a reminder, feel free to type whatever questions that it is or comments that you have into the chat as we're going along. All right, you're good to go.
Okay. So the whole premise of my part of today's presentation is to really talk about what the market looks at in terms of value, and to help us know what are good decisions and bad decisions to make for properties you own based on what your outcome is. So again, my name is Nikki Collins. I'm a second generation real estate professional. I got my undergrad degree in IT before the bubble burst. One of the times when the bubble burst, because you know that IT bubble will burst. And my mother is an appraiser and a real estate broker. And she suggested that I consider real estate, which is something I had always said I would never even consider. And so I went and got a real estate master's degree from Texas A&M. And I need to update that slide because even though I'm not getting any older, somehow I keep being in this professional longer and longer. So let's talk about how do we determine what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. So the first thing we want to look at in terms of investment, and I always challenge people to think about their properties, even if it's the home that the first home you bought by yourself when you really felt like you wanted to make a real adult move, or I'm going to do something about those children. I'm sorry. Or I'm a homeschooling mom. And oh, it's summertime, so everybody's going through it, but I'm really going through it. Or if it's we have these emotional ties to our homes, oh, we got married and this is the first home we bought when we got married. Or we had our first child and this is where we brought our child. And so, oh, I'm so, and I want you to put those parts to the side for some of this. And we're going to talk about when it's appropriate to make decisions for your home based on the ooey gooeys, and when we should be making decisions based on fact. And so we want to talk about what's the return, right? Return talks about return on investment. And what I have generally said about return on investment, is that it is the amount of profit or loss that you will incur based on an investment you make. And I have always made it 100% about money, but that's not true, right? Sometimes the return is ooey gooey. And we see that further down the line. So we're going to talk about cost versus value. We're going to talk about pecuniary value, and we're going to talk about personal value. So return on investment measures the profits you have made or could have made on an investment, right? Lots of times we talk about, when you listen to the people who speak the jargon, they'll say, I need an ROI of 8%. I need an ROI of 10%. I can't do this deal unless I know I'm going to make XYZ percentage. And what they're saying is, if I give you $1, I need to make $1.10 for this deal to work for me. I need a 10% return. If I give you $1, so, in a crazy world, they might say, I want 100% return, even though there are so many things where people are making 100% returns. It sounds crazy, but it happens. If you make a sock for 5 cents, but then you go and sell that sock for $15, which is a very real thing in this world we live in, then you've made several 100% as far as your return on investment is concerned. So that brings us to cost versus value. I was talking to Nia before we began, and this is going to make me skip something I was talking about later on, but this is such a good explanation of cost versus value. We're going to talk about pools in Houston, Texas, and the surrounding area. And we love pools. I do. It's fun back there. And the kids can't get in it today because they need to clean up. But we assign value to a lot of things based on their cost, and that's not always the case. So this client, this homeowner, says that they spent $150,000 to put in this pool. Now, debatable, right? Because they're telling me that's what they spent, but they provided no paperwork. And if it's new and you really want me to consider it dollar for dollar, I need paperwork. But let's say, for sake of argument, that they spent $150,000 on this pool. Okay. The homes in this area are under $500,000. So one, you want to tell me you spent 20% of your home's value on, more than 20% of your home's value on a pool. We need to have a talk anyway about good money spending. So they say that they spent that money, and they said but didn't say, because it's illegal now to influence a real estate appraiser. They said but didn't say, we want you to adjust accordingly. And we'll talk about adjusting when we get what an appraiser does in that when we get a little further down the line. But they wanted me to make the cost of the pool the value of the pool, right? We spent $150,000. We're getting ready to sell our house. We want that back. Well, unfortunately, that's not how it works. We see it most often. The easiest way for us to recognize that that's not how it works is the car dealership, right? You go to the car dealership, you buy a brand new car for $10,000. I don't know what this car is, but give me easy math, okay? You buy a brand new car for $10,000. You drive it off the lot. You get, 3 weeks down the road, you say, I really think I like that other car better. I'm going to go and sell this car back to the dealership and buy the other car. Well, that car that you bought 3 weeks ago for $10,000, when you bring that car back to the dealership and offer to sell it back to them, they're going to say, great, we'll give you $8,000. We need you to give us the other $2,000. The value and cost just were not commensurate. They were not commensurate. So in that particular neighborhood, it's a brand new neighborhood. The house was only 2 years old. They were getting ready to sell it. And nobody in the neighborhood had even put in pools, right? No one else had put in pools, which means that this neighborhood did not assign much value to having a pool. And if the market does not assign value to a particular thing, neither can a real estate appraiser. So let's talk about things that affect return on investment. The rising cost of money, labor, and materials. We are still experiencing the rising cost of money, labor, and materials. When we talk about what the cost of money increasing or decreasing, that's all about what the Fed is setting the interest rate at. And right now, we've been in quite some time. They keep saying, oh, we're gonna lower it. You know, we're playing double dutch with maybe will they, won't they? Will they, won't they? And right now we're still in won't they won't. And so that means that money is still expensive. Um, you know, we all herald the time of the 2% mortgage rate. You know, it was a bad idea then, because that's why part of the reason why we're in the situation we're in right now with real estate. But money was less expensive. And so as a result, people were able to spend more. You were able to buy bigger because the cost of the cost of your loan was less expensive because the interest rates were lower. Now, you say, well, that just means the house is more expensive. What does that have to do with labor and materials? Well, if your interest rates and costs are going up, so also are the costs of your labor providers and your suppliers. So that means that stick that was 10 cents a year ago is now $2. And so that means that your profit margin has decreased substantially just because everything is costing more to produce. So let's talk about if we're going to consider right now, if we're looking at making changes or doing things in order to sell a property. So the thing we want to consider first is whether we're in a seller's versus buyer's market. We hear that a lot, right? They'll say, oh, this is a good time for sellers, this is a good time for buyers, but what does that really mean? How do we identify it, and how does this impact our return? So let's define them first. Seller's market. Typically in a seller's market, not typically in a seller's market, the reason we say that it is a seller's market is because all the stars have aligned for the seller to have the best return on their investment. What is happening in the market at that time? One, interest rates are lower. When interest rates are lower, that means that more people will qualify for funding. If more people qualify for funding, then instead of the seller having 3 qualified people looking at their property, they have 30 qualified people looking at their property, right? So the cost of money is less for the buyer, which you would think would make it a good thing for the buyer, but it really makes it a good thing for the seller. The bigger the buying pool, the better the seller's chances are of increasing their impact, of increasing their return. We saw during the back end of COVID, when the property values skyrocketed for no reason, there was no legitimate, it wasn't as if you know, there was a lot of fixing things up and sprucing things up and, oh, things are so nice, this is a good time to buy. No, this was a house that you would have walked in and said, oh my goodness, this needs so much work. Is now in a bidding war because the buyers have the money. They can fight over this less than you know, less than average conditioned home. And so we were seeing a lot of that at that time when mortgage rates were really low. So, and what begins to happen is that the prices will just trend up during that time. So a buyer's market on the other hand, is interest rates are so high that the buyer pool has been restricted. And because the buyer pool is restricted, buyers are also able at that point to be discriminating, and not discriminating in terms of the choices that they're making regarding their home purchases, their property purchases. We've seen buyers walk into a home during a buyer's market and they'll say, I love everything about this house, except I like a black cabinet. You know, if the seller will change out all the cabinetry and make it all black, I'll buy it. No, you don't want to do that. Next house. Because there are far more properties available than there are qualified buyers to purchase them. And so we're beginning to see, and we're not beginning to see, we're in the shift, really, in a lot of markets. And I say a lot of markets because even though the Houston area is one big real estate market, there are innumerable submarkets within the big market. You have people who are looking for affordable housing. You have people who are looking for luxury housing. You have people who are looking for ultra luxury housing. So there are just different segments of the market, and all of them, they act together, but they also act very independently. So in some places in the Houston market, you will see that this particular segment of the real estate market is still experiencing a seller's market, but for most of the real estate markets in Houston, a buyer's market is what is being experienced because buyers are being squeezed out due to lack of funding. And it also doesn't help that when you run that funding number, taxes are high, insurance is high. It's not a time for buyers if you have to, but we do what we have to do because we have to keep pushing forward. So we've decided we're going to sell this. We've decided we're going to sell this property, or we're considering selling the property. But we want to do some things around here before we do so. So what are some things that we think about? First thing is, how long will you own the property? Let's go back to that pool example, okay? They bought the house in 2023, brand new house. Put in a pool sometime between then and now, right? And then they're selling, which means that in theory, they have not had nearly enough time to enjoy the $150 worth of pool that they put in. So how long will you own the property? And we ask that because of the two different ways we look at value, which I thought I talked about, but I didn't. So the first way we look at value is the easy way. It's pecuniary. Dollars, cents, cold hard cash, war bonds, wire transfers. We get that. Cash App, Venmo. We understand that part. When it's all dollars and cents, that part of value tends to make easier sense to us than the personal value. Personal value is what we talked about putting to the side earlier. It's the ooey gooeys. It's how this thing makes me feel, right? I want a little red Chevette. I know nothing about cars. So if I mess this up, y'all just charge it to the fact that I like books. Okay. All right. And not cars. It's a little red Chevette that I like. I think Chevette is a real car. And it's probably it's a classic. So let's say it's worth $50,000. But my granddad had a Chevette. And he used to drive me around in that car. And I love that car. And I wish I could find another car like that car. So I'm at the car show and I'm looking at this car. And I just love this car so much because it's just like my granddad's car. And I know that the Chevette only costs $50,000. And this person is trying to sell me this one for $75,000, trying to explain all the bells and whistles that are in there. But what is appealing and pulling and tugging and making me consider purchasing something for far more than it is pecuniarily worth is all my ooey gooeys and personal feelings about that thing. And so if I'm going to purchase with ooey gooey, then I better have an opportunity to really enjoy all these feels I'm buying. Otherwise, when it's time to sell, I'm mad. Because when it's time for me to sell that Chevette that was worth $50,000, that I paid $75,000 for because of my ooey gooey granddaddy feels, and now I want to sell it, and that person is offering me $55,000. Let's say because it's a classic car, it had some appreciation, but it's not going to have appreciation to get back to where you spent. And as long as you are like, I don't care, I spent the money so I could feel close to my granddad, then you're fine. But if you are like, didn't somebody see how much I spent? You're going to be upset. You're going to be upset. And so we want to consider how long you're going to own this thing. And in the consideration of how long do I own this property, am I going to have enough time to feel as if I really enjoyed this property? So how do we know how much enjoyment we're going to get? Is this a homestead property or an investment property? Homestead, am I going to live in it? Am I going to get to enjoy all of the things that I'm doing? Or am I buying this property, or am I making changes to a property that I intend to flip? I'm going to buy, renovate, sell. Or is it something I plan to hold as a long-term investment property for like rental? And so the way we would approach that should be different. What I do in my personal home should subscribe to my personal taste, right? Especially if I know that I'm going to be here a substantial amount of time to enjoy it, particularly if my tastes run to the weird. And I'm not saying that that people's tastes are weird in general. What I'm saying is that we have the middle of the road, right? In this block. Over here, we have super bland, and over here we have ooh la la, right? And if I tend to trend towards ooh la la in my taste, or even sometimes super bland, then I need to be prepared to enjoy those things myself and possibly have to make some changes if I ever intend on selling or leasing that property. So are you going to get to enjoy it, or are you preparing it for someone else's use and enjoyment? So will you enjoy the fruits of your labor? Those are things that I want you to think about in planning the timing of a thing. You may say, I want to put in a pool, but I'm moving next year. My husband was a soldier, and we didn't move around as much as lots of people, but we moved around enough for me. And there were instances where we would move, and I would know that we're not going to be here, for more than 2 years. And so there would be a room in the house or apartment or wherever we were living that was just full of unpacked boxes, because these are the forever home items. I'm not going to get rid of them because one day we will be stabilized again. It's just not today. So I'm not getting ready. Well, who am I pulling out this wedding china for? Leave that in there. We're going to eat on these good, nice, everyday plates. And one day we'll be in a place where we're permanent and we can finally unpack those boxes. And so we want to be mindful of when to do a thing so that we feel like we've gotten the best return. And it's either whether we feel like or whether we can calculate, right, whether we've got the best return. So let's look at the change. I say let's look at a lot, but we're going to take a look at the two types of changes that we could be making to our property. The first one is deferred maintenance. And I can't remember who's supposed to come on and talk to us about deferred maintenance today. But that's primarily what we're going to hear from the inspector about. And then you have capital improvements. And let's talk about the differences between the two. So deferred maintenance are routine actions that keep your asset in its original condition. And capital improvements are investments made to increase the value. And lots of things that people do thinking that they're going to increase the value are actually deferred maintenance, the updates. I will go into a property to appraise it, and they'll say, "Oh, we put in new carpet. That should increase our value." And I will say, well, what's actually going to happen is it's going to help you maintain your value. Because had you not put in the new carpet, I would have said that the house was in less than average condition and you would have lost value. But because you replaced the carpet, no, not updated, because you replaced the carpet, which is what needed to be done, that means that you're able to maintain your value, right? Maintenance things. What things are considered maintenance? Putting in a new water heater, maintenance. Replacing the air conditioning, maintenance. Replacing the roof, maintenance. What things would be considered capital improvements. So there was an initiative in 2000 that required certain energy efficiency things. One of the things was windows. So when we look now at homes that were purchased before 2000, one of the very first things a good appraiser is going to look at, and I do say the good ones, is whether or not the windows had been replaced, because that means that they had begun to do some of those things. If I walk up to a property, this is outside, I haven't looked at anything else yet. If as I'm walking up to a property, and it was built in 1984, I can see that they've replaced the windows. My assumption is now that they have made updates throughout the property. I haven't stepped foot in. Now, I may open the door and say, well, all they did was replace the windows. They haven't done anything else. But your mind leans towards them having done more updates. If I walk up to a property that was built in 1984 and it still has original single pane, no low E-gas, windows, then I say, oh, they haven't yet begun the updating process, especially if the other homes in the neighborhood have already made a lot of those changes to bring them current. So what other things could be capital improvements that we would actually give you good credit for? One of the examples I always use is my personal home. We've gone through what I would call all the ages and stages of upgrade. The house was built in 1982, and we moved here in 1986. I still live in my childhood home. I have the blessed privilege of raising my mother. That's a whole nother issue. So the downstairs was initially vinyl sheet, right? Linoleum. And we replaced the linoleum when we got ready to get fancy, also known as my sister burned the floor. When we got ready to get fancy, we brought in those blue, and this is going to tell how old you are, whether you can recognize this tile, but it was a blue tile that had a flower at the corner. And when you matched up the tiles, it made a big flower in the corner. And so we had the downstairs was like that. And, we were real big, real fancy. And then because that was what they were doing at that point. And then we had another floor iteration where all the tile went white, right? Because there was a big white floor movement for a period. So we changed, the floors were white. And then we moved to when everyone was putting in the tile that looks like wood. And they were 4 inches by 24 inches. And, we were fancy then. And so now I think the current iteration we're in is the big wood look plank, but it's tile. And I want to say those are maybe 4 feet long. And so what we have done, which it's a little, we get to see what's happening in new builds, what's going on in new houses. And so as time has transpired, we have kept up with not the Joneses, but the builders, right? And so that always keeps our home in what we would call C3 condition. That's an appraisal term. And that says that your house has been updated to reflect what's currently happening in the market. Now, there are some capital improvements that you can't see. And so if you're ever having an appraisal and you've done these things, you want to make sure that the appraiser knows, because if you don't tell them, they won't know. This house had galvanized plumbing, 1982. And we went through, cut holes in all the walls and added the PEX plumbing, major plumbing update. And if this house was built in 1982, it could not handle the load, the electricity load that we pull in 2025. So we upgraded the panel and we added a second panel because we needed to make sure we could pull the vast quantities of electricity that we use in this day and time. Those things that bring your property into current day, those are capital improvements. those things that just help your house still function. We had the AC man out yesterday to come and run something, nitrogen or something through a line because it had started to drip because we didn't do what we say in here to do every year, to have them come service your AC before the summer really gets underway. And it started a light little drip from the pan. So we said, oh no, let's get somebody to come in here and do some maintenance on this system. So if it's just keeping you to meet the status quo, then those things are maintenance. If it brings you further into what's happening in the market, then those things are capital improvements. So what should you do, right? We've made a decision that we know what we want to, we know what returns we want to have. We know exactly how long we're going to get to enjoy or not enjoy these changes that we're making. What do we do now? What do we do now? So if you're getting ready to sell, or if you're getting ready to prepare a property for rental, think like the person who you are marketing towards. And so that's why I said think like a buyer, but maybe you're just looking for a tenant. So think like the person you're marketing to. And what if I were coming to buy a home, or to rent a home, what would be those things that I would want in this space? And I'm not saying those things that we're talking about. These are the base level things, right? We're talking about being in that center block. This is the middle of the road, not the bland and not the ooh la la, but what would most people expect in this property? And I like to put it this little would you rather, because we tend to do things for it's not really for someone, it's not really for others. We tend to do things thinking about how we would feel about something as opposed to how the market will respond to something. So would you rather, right there we have, I'm pointing at the screen in case y'all can't tell. We have two different types of stone. One is a granite, one is a Carrara marble. And I always use that example because Carrara marble is really beautiful. The veining is beautiful. Carrara marble is also really expensive. And one of the reasons why Carrara marble is so expensive is because you have to get into a certain part of the stone in order for it to look like the Carrara marble that people are accustomed to. Because if you cut into the wrong part of the stone, what you end up is with that stone that's on the bottom that most people would think is a granite, because we're used to granite having that flecking, right? And we're used to marble having that veining. But granite can also have that veining, as we see in that picture at the top right, because that's the marble, and the one on the bottom left is a piece of Carrara marble. The one on the top right is the granite. And the one on the bottom left is a piece of Carrara marble that was cut out of an imperfect part of the slab. They would not sell that part of the slab and call it Carrara marble. So you want to be careful that you don't make decisions based on, well, I would love bamboo floors. That's fine. Does your market support bamboo flooring? This imported bamboo flooring as something that buyers would expect and therefore pay for? Because if it's not, put that vinyl plank in there and let's move on. It's a real good looking bamboo look vinyl plank. We're not going to do more than a buyer would expect. Then I want you to think like an appraiser. So here's the part where we get to where I shine. So what's happening? Let's talk about how an appraiser determines value. So I live at 123 Main Street. And to my left, there's 121 Main Street, and to my right, there's 125 Main Street. If I am trying to determine the value at 123 Main Street, a perfect sales comparable would be 121 Main Street, and it's the exact same floor plan, the exact same square footage, the exact same everything, and it sold yesterday, right? Because then we can say, well, if that house is just like this house and it sold for $110,000, then surely this house is also worth $110,000. That is, in theory, how appraisal works. We look at historical data. what has happened in the market already to make an estimate, to make an educated forecast of what will happen regarding this particular property. And so because we typically don't have the luxury of having the same floor plan, same square footage, everything selling next door, then we have to go further out into the market to find properties to compare. And we call those sales comparables. Because they're not exactly the same, we do what we call adjusting, right? We say if this house, if 123 Main Street has 3 bedrooms and 125 Main Street has 4 bedrooms, then what kind of difference is that making to the value, that extra bedroom or that lack of a bedroom? And so those are the things that we are considering when we're looking at property valuation. So people look at quality of, so when we talk about those adjustments and looking at the changes, sometimes quality makes a bigger difference and sometimes quantity makes a bigger difference. Let's talk about that being a thing. So one of the things that we look at is how functional a property is. And this particular house has 6 rooms, okay? And so it has a kitchen, family room, dining room, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Well, we've said, I bet this house would be worth more if it had an extra bedroom. So we're going to get rid of the dining room and make it a bedroom. Well, now the appraiser is going to come in and say, where do people eat here? Right? So theoretically, an extra bedroom is a good idea unless it makes the house less functional. Now, if you were to say we have a formal living, a family room, a dining room, a kitchen, let's turn that, we never use that formal living room. Let's turn that into a bedroom. Now we've added value. So it's not always it's not always just a numbers thing. It's also how it affects the functional use of that property. Am I over improving or not doing enough? If nobody else is putting in imported bamboo floors, then you just better love them, because the appraiser is going to be like, I don't know why this was done. In the pool example, we gave them $20,000 worth of value for that pool because we couldn't justify anything more than that. Pools are a liability. Lots of people don't want them because it increases the cost of their insurance. So just because we live in Houston and it's hot doesn't mean that everybody wants a pool. In fact, the market trends typically show, I mean, we don't even have like a 50% pool number in the metropolitan area. And also, how's the market moving? Are things speeding up or are things slowing down? If things are speeding up, then you may be able, if we're heading into a seller's market, you may be able to make a few more upgrades, do a few more things because the market is supporting growth in that area. But if things are slowing down in your particular segment of the area, then you may not want to do as much because you may not recoup those expenses. So let's talk about what to do. What can we do? Now that we've talked about what it all means, let's talk about what do we do. Low cost changes. Clean up. Clean up. Wipe down the walls. Clean the baseboards. There is nothing like clean to say this will be money well spent. Think about the difference you feel when you walk into a hotel room that has been cleaned really well and one that has been cleaned subpar. If you see a stray hair sitting on the countertop, you already know this is not going to be a good stay, and you're down at guest services. See what I'm saying? And so it's a very similar experience when you are showing your property for the sake of sale or leasing. You want to make sure that people are not saying, if they didn't do this, what also did they not do? Another low cost change, paint. If there are stains and marks and whatever on the walls, paint. If there are smells in the property, sometimes painting, if you use the correct paint, will cover those odors. It will absorb those smells and it will brighten up the air in the property. So there are light and simple things we could do. Replace and repair damaged or stained items. Are there, did somebody have a really good time playing wrestling with their brother and kick a hole in the sheetrock? Let's repair it. Did someone hit a door and leave a hole in it? Let's replace it. Those things that we can do fairly low cost, those are always going to give us, the lower you spend, that automatically increases your return on investment. So if we want to make big investment jumps in terms of return on investment, what do? When we talk about the appraisal form and the condition, there are only 2 rooms they ask you about whether they have been updated or upgraded. We think it's wonderful that you replace the flooring throughout. That's great. We think it's wonderful that you painted everything. That was nice. It looks so good. But if you replaced all the floors and you painted everything and the kitchen is out of 1970s, we're not going to adjust condition for you, even though you spent all of that money on painting and flooring. And so when we talk about what sells houses, it's kitchens and bathrooms. Those are the only 2 things we ask about in the condition section on the current real estate appraisal forms. Because if you have done those big ticket item things, then it tells somebody else that they don't have to do those big ticket item things. And then floor and decor, and you may think that I'm saying do more in terms of decor, and I'm saying do less. Keep it as neutral a palette as you can so that people can envision themselves putting their own stamp on it. So really quickly, because these are things that people always consider. We've already talked about pools. Y'all know how I feel. You know where I stand. I love them, but you need to be ready to enjoy it. Solar panels. We are not green yet in Houston. We are still very much oil and gas. And so we tell people often, lenders, if you have a leased solar panel, if you are still making payments on solar panels on your property and you prepare to sell, the average lender will not absorb their client taking on that fee, and you will have to pay them off before you can sell. So because we don't treat them as fixtures yet to the real estate, especially if you are continuing to make payments separate from your mortgage for those solar panels. Generators, they are nice to have, and we mention them. But again, we're still oil and gas. We're not green yet. We say, we mentioned that you have them, but they don't really impact your value like you think they would. Outdoor kitchens, same family as pools. We really want you to enjoy them, but we're more than likely not going to give a lot to it unless you're in a portion of the market where swimming pools and outdoor kitchens are expected. There are some parts of Houston where it would be it would be an anomaly to not have a pool in an outdoor area, but there are more parts of Houston where that's not the norm. So if you're preparing to do something, make a plan, start out with what you want your return to be, whether you want an ooey gooey return or you want a dollar and cents return. Know exactly what the metric it is that you're using. I want to update up to this point or upgrade up to this point with the intention of selling or leasing, or I just want to make upgrades that I can enjoy for the next 15 years while I'm here. And so I don't care, how this will affect me dollar-wise, other than I don't want to spend too much. Because we always say, don't overextend. Be honest and specific about what your goals are, how much you are willing to lose if you don't get anything back, if you don't get back what you spent, and don't go past what you're comfortable. So if you need to get in contact with me, my phone number is 281-414-5709. And my email address is nvcollins@keysres.com. And that's it.
All right, good deal. Oh, there's Cliff. It says owner. I'm like, where is Cliff? I know he.
Oh my God,
All
I
right,
don't know what happened. Can
that's
you hear
okay.
me?
I'll change it, but you can go right ahead on. Miss Nikki's got to undo her screen share. Okay, there you go.
Okay. And let me see where I can hit share. It's requesting.
Oh, hold on. Let me make you co-host.
Sure.
Sorry. GI.
There we go.
Oh. Okay, now go ahead.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen then?
Not yet, no.
Okay. What? Really good to have. Let me see.
Are you sharing from the Zoom?
That's what I'm trying to do now. I hit more. I sent the request to share. There it is. So let's see. There we go. Let's see. Share that. Okay. Now we're sharing this screen. How's
Yep,
everybody doing?
good. How about yourself?
I'm all right. I'm going to dive right into this one. We want to talk about home maintenance and some of the consequences that could take place on a property when it's not well maintained.
Hey,
This is an
Cliff,
actual
hey,
report.
can we have you introduce yourself first? You jumped right
Oh, I'm
on
sorry,
in.
you know, we have to dive straight
Nobody
into
even
it. You
knows
know,
who you are.
now I'm Clifford Joe with GI Inspections. I've been a part of doing the home workshops and the maintenance. Wow, what years for now. And I enjoy doing these. I like talking to homeowners about what they need to know about their homes in the event that something becomes starts out as a minor issue, becomes a bigger issue. I've been doing home inspections now since 2009 in that window. Previously, I was in the Army. I did 14 years in the Army. After that, started out in real estate. Didn't really care much for it, got into home inspections, and I found my rhythm and stayed with it. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell. So, any questions so far?
Uh, Not yet.
Not yet. All right. Now we're gonna dive into this report. So, my contact information is right here at the upper right corner, phone number, and email address. And I chose this report because I saw a lot of things that took place at this home because of poor maintenance. And if I'm going to scroll down here to 2.1.2.8 on the foundations, heavy settling below grade. This home settled below grade and it had done so for a long time. Part of the problem why this foundation settled like that is because the house hadn't been graded, the yard hadn't been properly graded, nor did they have any gutters around the home. So poor drainage around the home can lead to excessive settling and possible foundation cracks, just like what we're looking at here in this section here. This is the same house. Remember, this is a house that had no gutters, poor drainage, and heavy settlement. So if you're a homeowner, always check around your home to make sure the water is sloped. I mean, your property is sloped where the water drains away from your home. Because when the water starts to drain towards the foundation, that's the end result. You start seeing problems like settlement. And I'm almost 100% sure this floor has a cracked foundation, multiple cracks, because everywhere I went in that house, it had it. And that was over time. That doesn't happen overnight. That settlement doesn't take place overnight. It goes on for years. So you as a homeowner, you have so much time to get in front of it. That's why I'm starting with the outside because a home with a poor foundation, now you're going to have problems elsewhere in your home, and you'll see it in this report. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Those tree roots here, if you have a home in your yard and you're starting to see tree roots up against the foundation wall here and here at these two, I'm actually under the tree roots of foundation area, at this section that I'm circling my cursor around. When you see that, that becomes a problem to you, the homeowner. You don't want your tree roots getting too far under your foundation and moving around. Now your tree roots become part of the stabilizing mechanisms for your foundation. Because when you cut that tree, you can't always just pull the tree roots out. They're needed there because if you pull those tree roots out, that's going to destabilize the foundation because there's a void there. So one thing as a homeowner, I would say is before it gets to this point, add a root barrier around your home And a root barrier is something that you can have a landscaping company or a contractor do. And what they do is they just put a barrier about 3 feet deep around your home to deter tree roots from entering under your home. And that's a big safety net if you're a homeowner. It's worth the investment. I can scroll down this again. That was a repair I'm not really concerned about. But we talked about, again, on the drainage side, poor gutters. How are you going to move your water away from your home? When the rainwater ends up rolling from your roof down your gutters and away from the home, in this case, no gutters, that's not going to happen. So again, if you're a homeowner, you want to put those gutters in so you can channel water away from your home. One maintenance tip I will give a homeowner with these is keep them clean. Keep your gutters clean, because poor gutters with backed up with leaves and all kind of vegetation, once that water starts to back up, what happens is, and I'm looking at the picture on the right where my cursor is moving, when that water backs up, if you have gutters in place, it's going to tear all of this up. That fascia board is just going to rot it away over time, because the gutters are filled with debris, tree branches, and things of that nature. And then you have a bigger problem. Like now, this is the same home. You see all of those areas where there's water ponding? All of that is the result of poor drainage around the home. And this is a rural area, but it's still no excuse to have poor drainage when you could easily have it graded, have that yard graded around your home, because everything at this point is just ponded. All of that water that's sitting there taking its time to evaporate, some of that is working its way under the foundation of the home. So when it gets under that foundation, you're going to have some more movement. So again, it's real important to make sure you channel your water away from your home. I'm actually on the roof of this house. In a nutshell, anytime you have a home and if you have a 30-year roof, a 30-year roof is probably going to last you about 25 years, provided you don't get hit with any storms or anything. You have a 20-year shingle, it's probably going to last you about 15 before you start seeing some type of wear and tear on it. Anytime, and this is a rule of thumb to any homeowners, once you make 2 repairs or more on a roof, it's pretty much time to replace it. Because if you don't, you're going to start seeing moisture intrusion points. You may start at the chimney like here, or the PVC pipes here. And it just deterioration, poor maintenance, and you have points inside this home where I could see where moisture entered this home, and I'll show it to you later in this report. But always, as a rule of thumb with maintenance, if you have a contractor, have him get on the roof and caulk and seal around these areas, the flashing, the apron of your vent. Even with these, same thing. These are dated. They should have been replaced a long time ago. But under normal circumstances, you just go around, caulk around the base of the flashing, of the boot flashing, because when you do that, you add an extra layer of protection to the area where the pipe has penetrated. So the mission is to not let any moisture in. So once you go through and seal these areas off, it's always a good rule of thumb to come back and check. Just like any homeowner, when you're doing your yearly maintenance checks, get on the roof and look at it, or have a contractor get up there and look at it and see what's going on, and we'll go from there. I can go now into this roof covering. This roof, if I'm looking at this first picture here, this picture and the second picture here, definitely the first one, there was a major depression there, and I could tell they did some repairs to that roof. So when they made the repairs, when I got in the attic space, I was able to see it was not a good repair. And it was just shingles there, seen from the attic. The whole decking rotted away. And when I'm driving that, when I say this, when you go and make your repairs, have a qualified person go in and do the repairs for you. If it's out of your realm, yeah, you may have to pay a little extra to have someone go in and do it. But paying for it now, small, and paying for it big later is a big difference. And you'll see on this one because there was so much damage there, the whole roof was going to have to be replaced because of a lot of other issues to include the age of this roof. Let's see. These are some thermal images. Insulation. So if you as a homeowner and this was done with a thermal camera, but you can easily walk your attic and you can see areas where you have hot points, what we call heat signatures. This, poor insulation can lead to some high utility bills. And you have to remember, I don't know if anyone involved in this session or not had any busted pipes during the freeze that took place a while back. Well, once the water got in contact with that insulation was pretty much done. So ask yourself, when the repairs were made to the busted plumbing line, did anyone go back and add insulation to those areas? Because that insulation makes a huge difference in your utility bills. So anytime you have a leak or a break, even with a roof leak or a plumbing leak, go back and look at the insulation in that area. If it's matted or if it's missing, go ahead and add some more. And the older the home is, this is a rule of thumb, the older the home is, the more insulation you want to have in that home. More insulation, older homes, since older homes tend to be more leaky, that's a good thing to have. Any questions so far? I guess not. We're going to move to the next section. Remember, we talked about the poor roof condition. This is the end result. If you have a bad roof, you start getting leaks like in here. One is the PVC pipe because the flashing was bad, and the flashing, well, this was just an actual roof repair. And what was done, this, instead of taking the time out and replacing the decking like they should have, they just went ahead and removed some of the rotted pieces and put some Flex Seal or something, some spray on Flex Seal, which is not a permanent fix. It is just a temporary fix. And it was already starting to leak again. And mind you, we just had some recent rains come through here, and we're going to get some more soon. So it's just a matter of time before the moisture makes it in through here and come down into the ceiling and into the home and ended up on the floor. We go back. I'm looking at these ridges here. I'm looking at this ridge, there's a bulge here, and there's this ridge, there's another bulge. And you look at your attic framing members, you see how they're starting to bow. This one on the other end is starting to bow as well. That's because of the foundation settlement. Bad foundation can cause movement that works its way up. And that movement now has worked its way up. And all of this could possibly been prevented if the grading around the home was good, gutters were added, and general maintenance. But we're missing those items. So this is usually the end result. And like I said, it didn't happen overnight, but it does happen over time. I'm not going to concern myself. Little settlement cracks, these are common. The dry rot at your fascia board, this is what I look at, because these become pest entry points. So as you as a homeowner, every year, you go walk around your home, look around your exterior walls, see what you're looking at, see if you see any damage or anything. You see any damage, possible pest entry points, go ahead and get in front of it. You get in front of it now, it'll be a small issue than opposed to waiting till later. I'm not going to worry about those areas. I'm not going to worry about these. This is common. This is common. These weather strippings, a lot of us, when we close our front doors, if you can see daylight between the doors and the door frame, it's probably time to add some more weather stripping, replacing it if it's worn out. Because if you leave that weather stripping in place and it's in poor condition, all of your cold air is going right out the door. And if cold air can get out, hot air can get in. If hot air can get in, rain can get in. If rain can get in, then pests can get in. So to eliminate it all together, it's a good idea to replace the weather stripping. So when the door is closed, you don't see any type of daylight. When you come down, this is exterior window caulking. This is a very common issue that I see, especially with older homes, is where, in this case, the caulking deteriorated years ago and there's some foundation movement, but always look around your windows and doors. If you standing on the outside and you can see the caulk along this one that is deteriorated, if it's in poor condition, go ahead and recaulk those areas because it makes a big difference. Because you got to remember, if it rains, rainwater can enter at those points. And if you get rainwater in, the pests can get in. If you get pests, you can possibly get termites, you can possibly get mold too. So, and it'll be behind the walls. You'll never see it until later. So it's always a good idea to stay in front of these. Again, this is a spring cleaning thing. Once a year, walk around the home, look at these areas. If I see anything odd, take a picture of it, make a note of it, show it to my contractor. Hey, this is what I want done, and we move forward. This one, this is pest control. Looking at here, there's a hole in the wall. This was in the pantry closet. And, you know, pest control is key. You know, we live in Texas. The humidity is ripe for roaches. If we got roaches, we got rats. If we got rats, we got snakes. So if we can disrupt the food chain by properly treating our homes for pests, then we're doing a good thing. And this is one of them. I'm gonna skip this electrical, but it's a little bit above what we were doing. But I want to go into this AC system because as a homeowner, your AC system should be serviced at least twice a year. You want to do it in the spring and you want to have it serviced again in the fall because you'll be surprised at what can happen when you go along and you ignore the basic maintenance that's needed for your system. We tend to think of it as, well, there's no problem with my unit right now. I'll leave it alone until the time comes. And then we look around later and it's like, wow, my AC is not working. And then we call the AC guy. He's probably 2 weeks out before he can get to you. So it's always a good thing to maintain your unit because the recommendations may come and say, hey, look, I know you had this fan motor in here X amount of years. Yeah, it works, but it's past its life expectancy. Maybe it's a good time to go ahead and change this out. Same with the blower motor. Maybe it's a good time to change these parts out now rather than later, and they become more costly and inconvenient to you because you got to sit in that house. It's a hot house or a cold house, depending on the time of the year that this thing happens. So in this case, I'm looking here, my float switch. I'm looking at these wires tied to the float switch, actually float switch and the thermostat. They're resting inside of that pan. So if that drain pan was to fill up and now your wires are submerged in that water, there's a chance you may short circuit something out. Even when somebody left the water hose up here, all of this basic maintenance stuff. One, I would move that water hose because that's a trip hazard in the attic space. Two, your float switch. Go ahead and remove your wires outside of that pan because if you short circuit that float switch, not saying it always happens, but if you do, what's going to shut your system off when that pan fills up? Nothing. So it's just going to overflow. And like I said, it's just basic maintenance and a simple moving it around, put your wires in a safe place and keep moving. And it's an easy fix. This home, again, one, I'm looking at the air ducts in here. Anytime you get your home, if you decide to go and get your AC replaced, or even if you're in the home now and you haven't had it replaced, and your attic, your insulated air ducts are resting on the attic floor like these, you want to get someone in to get those lifted. And where they're hanging, you don't want them resting on the attic floor because they can become crushed, damaged, or damaged by human error, or you get pests that'll go in there and gnaw through the material, especially rodents when they start looking for a place to build a nest. So little things make a big difference now. This was the box leakage with plenum. I just call it a box, and that's usually on the ends of your AC system in the attic at the coil. So you'll have one end where the intake is, the other one coming out. Well, this one is broken. The seal is broken. So what's happening here is all your cold air is blowing into the attic. So you'll wonder why your home is not cooling properly, because when you think about it, 1 or 2 degrees will make a difference in your comfort level. 1 or 2 degrees. And you may be losing that 1 or 2 degrees in energy loss right here, because the air that's coming out there is leaking, it's forced air. So you're wondering again too, you're looking at a high utility bill, you're wondering why your utility bill is unusually high. This is usually one of the problems. Check your air ducts. I'm going to skip over these cabinets because they were kind of nonchalant at that point. They were actually loose. Washer connections. This, I would have sealed up at these flashings. When you're at your home and you look at them, look around the flanges around these fixtures, because sometimes that when it's sealed and those flanges sealed and tightly put in place, that helps stabilize that fixture. These are PVC lines, and I was able to move them with little or no effort. So what happens if you move it too far and you break the seal on the connection? You got a pressurized water leak. So it's always a good idea when you're checking around your home. Look, when you turn your sinks on, just look around your sinks, see if you have any water leaks anywhere. If you have any water leaks, just shut it off and go ahead and get the repairs done, because the leaks won't get any better. And the longer it stays in a leaky state, now you have chances of damaging to the vanities in certain cases, like the flooring under the sinks, between the walls, things of that nature. And when you have that, now you have a chance for possible mold growth, and definitely, mold and mildew. So you want to get in front of it. I'm going to talk to you about these flex drain lines, because I see a lot of these, a lot. And these are not up to today's standards. What it is I call it a cheater, because if you don't get the measurements right when you're trying to get your connections from the drain line of the sink to the wall, you cheat a little bit and use one of these flex lines. Here's why they're not good to have. You see how these bends are, these little crinkles? Well, I call it that accordion effect. Well, when you brush your teeth or wash your face or whatever, and the bacteria starts to go down that drain, a lot of it gets trapped in those little crevices. So over time, and say you're doing that every day, and then all of a sudden you got this odor coming from your sink, or you start to see those little gnats coming from the sink. This is where they're coming from. And they're building up in this little area because there's water left there to sustain life. So that's why it's always a good idea to have the inner bore as smooth as possible, where water can't collect, and then you have your germ problem. So if you get in front of this, replace these out. These are not good. Don't let anybody tell you any different. That's not good. This was an easy fix. Just a conduit issue with the water heater. But this is another thing, again, to homeowners who have dishwashers in their home. Under your sink, there is a line, it's a hose that's connected to the dishwasher, and it's connected to the food waste disposal. This is what it needs to happen. It needs to be raised up. And this one isn't. It's just it's looped around, and it's just connected to the food waste disposal. Here's where, in this little area right here, this is where your food is going to get caught up in there from the dishwasher, all kinds of sludge, food particles, and everything. That's why it's ideal to have it hanging under the back sink area. That's called a high loop. You want that loop in place, because eventually this dishwasher is going to start leaking, and it's going to be a problem. And it's all because of a simple loop that the installers forgot to put in. Let's scroll back. We see this a lot. This is actually a picture behind the stove where it says range not fastened. There's usually a bracket that's mounted to the floor. It's usually in the right corner, and it's an anti-tipping device, and it's a safety feature because we don't want kids opening the oven door, climbing on the oven door. Now you have a counterbalance issue, and then the range falls over them because of that weight, because they're trying to get to the microwave. And that fastener is there for that reason. It's a child safety feature, but A lot of times we get a new appliance in the home and we just plug it in, get it installed, and keep going about our business, and we forget to put that piece in place. Not having that piece is a major safety issue. Let's go around. This was something, this was a septic issue. And I know most of us live within the city limits. This issue, it's a septic issue, but there were some issues with not being able to identify exactly where the homeowner, where the septic company installed the system. They just gave a general area, and just a general area. What happens when, in this case, unfortunately, this was an estate sale, but what happens when you can't identify things? Matter of fact, the kids didn't even know that the home was on a septic system. So trying to get in front of it created bigger problems for them. And what maintenance issues overall, if you get in front of them now, they won't be bigger issues later. If you get in front of them now, they won't be bigger issues later. Another common thing I see in homes, when we go back to the ranges and stoves, there's a filter that's below the microwave. Pull that filter out and definitely keep it clean. Keep it clean. On your AC systems, sometimes you'll have an AC system and it'll have a cartridge filter in place. The cartridge filter is usually attached to the AC. And if it is, go ahead and change it out. If it's a 90-day filter or 180-day filter, change it out as needed. Or if you have the traditional 30-day filters in the home, change them out as needed. Here's the inside trick, and I'll tell you, when you call this for your homeowners out there, even your renters, if the maintenance team in the apartment come to your apartment for an AC problem, the first thing they're going to look at is your filter. And if they determine this filter hasn't been changed in so many months, you could be held liable for the damage to that unit. As a homeowner, when you call the home maintenance company out to service your AC, one of the first things they're going to look at is your filter. And they're going to ask you, when was the last time you changed it? He already can look at it and tell it hadn't been changed in a while. And he's going to write that in his report. He's going to make note that the filter hasn't been changed in so long. This could possibly be one of the causes of the poor performance. So that could determine whether you get favorable, I'm gonna call it what it is, favorable treatment when it comes to getting the system repaired and replaced, or unfavorable. Because when they look at it and it's something negligence on your part, they're not gonna want to invest too much money in it because it doesn't make sense. It's been ran through the system so long bad to where why should I incur this cost? It's not fair to me. I've seen where AC filters were pulled out and the dust and particles were so thick on it, you could literally roll them off. So the homeowner wondered why his unit wasn't cooling off. Why it actually was an apartment. Why wasn't it cooling off? The same with your dryers on the appliances. That dryer, periodically remove the filter and pull out the lint. You'll be surprised at what's in there. On electrical things, high energy electric LED type bulbs, there seem to be the rage right now. I'm kind of old school. I like my soft white lights, but they're getting better. But they last a lot longer and they cut down on the utility bill. Little things make the biggest difference. We're going right now, we're in hurricane season now. So definitely after every storm that comes through here, no matter how minute or how big the storm is, walk around your property, see what is out there, because you will be surprised. You're thinking, oh, it's not a big deal, and it turns out to be a bigger deal than what you expect. When we look at our yards, look at your trees and how close they are to the home. And even if the branches are not making contact with the roof covering, if the branches are over the roof, it's always recommended to cut those down because in the event that tree branch falls, it's going to fall onto your roof, and if it does that, you're going to have a lot of damage. So we don't want that. Your fence, I've seen so many times where the wind, especially the old fences, wind go through and blow them down. And they've been dated. They should have been replaced a long time ago. You may have replaced a plank here, a plank there, the entry door handle, things of that nature. But the fences, it should have been replaced a long time ago. So a lot of times when you go and you're doing your spring cleaning, you're doing your spring inspection, look at the fence, look at the planks. You'd be surprised at what you see there. Some of them are dry rotted, some of them have termite damage, and some of them are just plain old missing. And then, when you have lawn care, I've seen where it's a simple thing, but when these guys come through with the weed eaters, they kind of damage the bottom edges of those planks. So that's something that, we want to look at. So we look at our roof, we look at our foundation, we look at our plumbing systems, we look at our HVAC systems, and we look at our electrical. Always take the time, because these are big ticket items when it comes time to repairs. And if you stay in front of them on the general maintenance side, there's small costs that'll go a long way to where you're not stuck with one big cost. So those are the things I recommend that you as a homeowner or you as a renter, these are the things I would look at. As a matter of fact, I would tell you as a homeowner, go ahead and if you can find a blank, if you need one, I'll give it to you, a blank inspection report. And Nia has the home maintenance book. If you're sitting in this class, she has a book that I gave her, and she give it to anyone that's sitting in this class because you should know it. Just know the little things that's gonna make a difference later. So, if anyone have any questions at this point? I guess
There,
not.
there was another question, but we can wait to the end on that one because um, it was not about anything that you covered so far. It's a different question.
Okay, well, that pretty much concludes my presentation.
Okay.
So that's all I'm asking. Anyone had any questions so far?
Okay. The question here, my home is 10 years old. The garage has no insulation. What are your thoughts about putting insulation over the garage? Also about insulation in the walls of the home as advertised on TV.
Um, well, I would look and see how old the home is. Typically, the insulation is added to the living space of the home. The garage is not really considered living space, so therefore, when you go in the attic, especially on new homes, you won't see any insulation up there. If it is an older home, yeah, definitely, go ahead and put some insulation up there because the more the better. Because remember, older homes are more leaky homes. Newer homes, like I think said 2 years old, you're not going to have much of a problem with it. And the newer homes are engineered to be more of a cool home. That's why I said older homes, you do more insulation, newer homes, less. Here's the reason why you do less on newer homes. Our values are already set. One of the problems is you insulate a new home. If you insulate it too tight, there's no real air movement, no natural air movement. No natural air movement could lead to stagnant air, which can lead to possible mold problems. We've seen that happen before. I wouldn't add any wall insulations to my home, especially if it's a new one. I wouldn't do it yet.
Okay. That was the only question that was in the chat. I'm double checking the social media too, just to make
No, no,
sure.
no, you're fine.
Okay. Are there any participants that had a question that they wanted to ask directly as opposed to writing it in the chat? Please feel free to do so. Unmute yourself. Da, 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 da. Okay, I don't see anything on the YouTube channel either. Okay. Um, I just wanted to double check.
No, take your time.
Okay. And okay. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, let's see. Um, Interested in if you have any ideas about calendar for maintenance tasks. I guess like something that you should just do on a regular basis.
I typically go, well, to answer that question, if I'm going to go into my spring cleaning, that's typically when I would do my maintenance as far as my overall maintenance of my home. When it comes to general maintenance, like my AC filters, yeah, whatever the manufacturer suggests, that's what I'm going to do. Um, you can pretty much tailor what works best for you, but the foundation for me is spring and fall. Springtime, I'm going to do some major overhauling where I'm looking at everything around my home. The fall, I'm gonna do the same thing because I'm getting I'm basing everything around that check of the AC system. So while that's being done, I'm looking at everything else around my home. Now, again, like I said, if you get some type of storm or something of that nature, yeah, we're gonna go beyond that. I need to get out there and look at the condition of my roof. I need to look, you'd be surprised at some airborne plane, how fast it's moving, and how it comes through your home.
How often should people get their AC service?
Say again.
How often should people get their AC unit serviced?
I would say twice a year, spring and fall. Spring and fall.
What's the thing now with the AC, the Freon, the R rated or whatever the thing that's going on now
They're
with the
coming up with a
Freon?
new one. It's a new one out there. You went from R22 to R410A. Now I can't even remember what the new one is right now. So that all the other previous two are phasing out. So that's a new one. I will tell you, if you have a system and you're still using R22, it's going to be costly. It's a costly one because that Freon is hard to come by now because
So
they're
put it
phasing it out.
so putting the newer Freon in an older unit isn't going to do any kind of damage or anything like that, or do you have
Yeah,
to
it will.
replace?
It will
So
damage.
do you have to replace your whole unit because you don't have the Freon anymore?
There are two ways you can do it because what happens is it's the temperature of it. The uh the new Freon, the hold on just a second. The new the R22, the R22 Freon, the temperature is a lot higher than, a lot lower than the 410A. So the freezing temperature of it. So what happens is it starts to destroy the fittings, the rings inside the fittings. So what they don't tell you is you could take you could there's a kit, but most AC technicians either don't know how to do it or they're going to advise against it. There's a retro kit that you can put on your system. And when you put the retro kit on, you can go from R22 to 410A as opposed to buying an entire new system. But they don't always mention it. So if I was a person that's trying to swap mine out, I would ask about it.
So are they not mentioning it because they're trying, is it because of the upsell, they want you to pay for the new unit, or is it something that they just wouldn't
I hate to
recommend
be
so
the
that,
devil's advocate, but yeah, I think that's pretty much what it is.
okay, all right.
Yeah. So that's why, and it's not something that's highly promoted. So I would ask, and if I would keep drilling down until I get someone who say they know what they're doing. They keep drilling down on it because somebody knows it. Somebody know how to do it. And I was shocked when I was told, when I was reading about it. I was like, oh wow, there is a way to do it. Because you have to think, how many systems, that's millions of systems nationwide that would have to come out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's something to consider.
You said that was the Safe Home book, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's called, okay, got it. All right, so the book that Mr. Joe mentioned, I am going to send it out to you guys or include it in the link of the recording of this presentation, so that you guys can go back and because there is a lot of good information that's in that book about home maintenance. I think that's about it, Cliff. Is there anything else that you or Nikki that you guys would like to add before we go?
No, I'm
You know?
fine.
All right.
Just
Okay,
don't
well,
forget, we're in protest season. So
yeah.
make
Hopefully,
note of all of those things that you haven't done or that need to be done in your home if you're preparing to protest. Because those things do impact your tax valuation.
Mm-hmm.
okay. All right. With that being said, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you coming and spending a little bit of time with us today. And hopefully you got the information that you came or that you intended to receive from this presentation. Again, as mentioned before, if there are any workshops that we don't currently offer that you all may be interested in, or there's some issue that's facing yourself or for your neighborhood, then please reach out to us and let us know so we can make some accommodations as we're planning for our fall session. So thank y'all very much, Cliff and Nikki, once again, as usual. Thank y'all for taking your time out this afternoon to provide this information to our community members that are on watching us today. So I think that's about it. All right. You all have a wonderful remainder of your day. You take care of yourselves, you stay safe, and we will see y'all next time.